guys. You may or may not know, but it is National Epilepsy Month, and it is really important to spread awareness about epilepsy. Each year, 150,000 more people are diagnosed with epilepsy, and over a lifetime, 1 in 10 people will have a seizure, and 1 in 26 will develop epilepsy. It is very pervasive. And the reason that I want to talk about epilepsy today is because it's something that has impacted my life personally quite a bit. I mean, it has had a major impact on my life. In my last video, I talked about my journey through bariatric surgery and how I got to where I was at my heaviest and where I am now. And I mentioned, a difficult childhood. And part of that is my dad and my brother both had epilepsy. So my dad had epilepsy. He would have epileptic seizures, and then he developed a heart condition. And so he had a lot of physical problems, and then he developed mental problems. He would have depression, he would have panic attacks. And so his struggles definitely impacted our family life. And then, my mom had struggles of her own. And so there was just a lot going on. But I remember, ambulances coming to my house more frequently than one would expect. And because he had a seizure and he had to go to the hospital. And one especially poignant memory I have is on Remembrance Day. We were at church and they were showing a video of, or maybe it was a play. It was something regarding the war, the soldiers. There were the sounds of bombs going off. There were flashing lights. And my dad had a seizure in the pew. And so I was sitting with my friend at the time, and I didn't know that this had happened until somebody came and got me. And so I did not see the seizure, but I went to the back, and there was a book room in the back, and he was laid out. And I think I was maybe 8 at the time. And I remember him laying there, and I remember my friend's mom doing chest compressions on him. And I remember hearing her say, "I think I broke his rib." And I was just, I guess, stunned is maybe a word, but also just, it was really the scariest moment of my childhood because it seemed like my dad was dying. And I remember somebody took me downstairs and was talking to me, and for a long time I really believed, and maybe she was an angel from God because she really calmed me down and talked to me and comforted me. And that memory just sticks out in my mind because it really kind of exemplifies what epilepsy does. I mean, epilepsy is not a fatal illness. It's something that you can live with, you can medicate, but it is so dangerous because when you have a seizure, things can happen. You can fall and hit your head. You can be driving, and have an accident. And there were years when we didn't have a car because my dad couldn't drive. He had a seizure, and the law in Canada was you had to be 12 months seizure free or 24 months seizure free, whatever it is. It was a certain length of time where you had to be seizure free, and then you could get your license. If you had a seizure, you were done. But at a point, you are a driver and then you have a seizure. And, I remember him falling headfirst into the pavement having a seizure and just like battering the side of his face. And it really is terrifying as a child just to see this. My brother, I remember we were playing a game in our basement, and all of a sudden he sprawled over the game board, messed up all the pieces. And I remember yelling at him, like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? And then he just started convulsing, and, I ran and got my mom, and, he was diagnosed with epilepsy. And so he was on medication. He still is on medication, and he struggles with that in his life. It is a struggle for him. His son diagnosed with epilepsy, and it can run in families. I've heard that it's not genetic, but I don't know the truth of that. But I know that my dad had it, my brother had it, my brother's son had it, and I was fearful that my son would get it. He didn't thus far, but it is a very scary neurological disease. In 1998, I lost my dad. He, as I said, he had a heart condition. He had a seizure in the bathroom when he was getting ready for work. And he fell over. He smashed his head into the porcelain soap dish that was in our shower. He had a heart attack at the same time. He was without oxygen for, I don't know, a long time. And I was not home at the time. I was at school. And I remember the phone call. And I remember they called me down to the office and they said, go in this room. There's a phone call for you. And it was my pastor. And he told me that my dad was at the hospital. And this is something that had happened in my life before. I've been told, Dad's in the hospital. Dad had a seizure. But this time it felt like my world was ending. And I just felt like this was different. And so I went home. Somebody drove me to the hospital. And he was in a coma. And he was in a coma for 7 days until we made the decision to take him off life support and let him go. And that is why it is so important to spread awareness for epilepsy. Because if you have a seizure and you fall and hit your head, I mean, it can be very dangerous. You know, there are other complications that can happen. And so, one of the things that is going on for the month of November, the Epilepsy Foundation has started a campaign called #StaySafeSide. And it is an effort to educate people about epilepsy, what it is, and what to do if you see somebody having a seizure, because you could save their life. And knowing what to do if you see that, if you're in that situation, is absolutely critical. So the first part is stay with the person and start timing the seizure. You should remain calm, don't freak out, check for a medical ID, but most importantly, just stay with them. If the seizure lasts longer than 5 minutes, call 911. A lot of times people panic and they call 911, and it's not like, if you're somebody that's epileptic, then you might know, like, don't call an ambulance for me every time. I have seizures, and it got that way with my dad and my brother. Like, it wasn't necessary to go to the hospital every time. We just knew how to deal with it. And then they would be like super tired after, and, after a while they'd be okay. But stay with them and stay calm. The second one is safe. Stay safe. Keep the person safe. You want to move or guide them away from harmful objects or move the objects. You know, it can be really difficult to move somebody who's having a seizure. So just make sure that the area around them is free from anything that could harm them when they're, you know, convulsing. The side, turn them on their side if they're not awake or aware. My dad would not be conscious, like he would just be convulsing. And so it's important to move them on their side. You don't want them to swallow their tongue. That's very dangerous. So you can put something soft under their heads. If they're wearing tight clothes, loosen their clothes. Just make them comfortable. Don't give them water. Don't give them pills. Don't put anything in their mouth. Do not restrain them. You know, just they need to have the freedom to move and not be, so they're not going to get injured. And then just stay with them until they're awake and alert. Most seizures will end in just a few minutes. So it can look really scary. It can be, you know, difficult to watch, but the most important thing is just making sure that the person is safe until the seizure ends. You can go to epilepsy.com for more information about this campaign and about just epilepsy awareness and for information, education, and I really encourage you all to just take a minute to remind yourself about what to do in case you see somebody having a seizure. And, you know, you may never see somebody having a seizure. You may never need this information, but it's information that could save somebody's life if you are ever in that situation. So it's National Epilepsy Awareness Month. That's for November. And thanks for listening to a little bit of my history, a little bit of what I've gone through in my life in terms of epilepsy and the way that it's impacted me. And I really hope that you share this message. I'm going to put a link to the National Epilepsy, what is it called? Let's see. It's the Epilepsy Foundation. So I'm going to put a link in my description there. And I encourage you to share the hashtag Stay Safe Side, and just get it out there. Just let people know, because it's more common than you would think. It's too common. So, all right. Thanks, and I'll see you guys in the next video.